A man is sitting on the floor of a stone room in the middle of the night. The room is barely large enough for two people to lie down. The walls are rough-cut basalt, the dark volcanic stone that covers the Galilean hills like a bruise. No plaster, no bench, no table. Just tools in one corner, a sleeping mat in the other, and a small clay oil lamp, the kind archaeologists have pulled from first-century Galilean soil by the hundreds, burning on a ledge near his head. His name is Joseph. He is a tecton, a builder, a stoneworker in a village called Nazareth, and he has not moved for a very long time. Earlier today, the girl he is engaged to came home from a 3-month visit to her cousin's house in the Judean hills. She came home pregnant, and Joseph knows with the certainty of a man who has not touched her that the child is not his. The oil lamp flickers. The room stays dark. To understand what is happening inside that room, you have to understand the world outside it. Nazareth in the first century was not a town. It was barely a village.
What is all this noise so early?
Excavations by the Israel Antiquities Authority, particularly a 2009 dig led by archaeologist Yardena Alexandra, near the Church of the Annunciation, revealed the first residential structure ever confirmed to date from the time of Jesus. What they found was modest beyond imagination: rough stone walls, a few storage pits cut into bedrock pottery shards, and the remains of a small courtyard. No public buildings, no inscription, no marketplace. This was a subsistence settlement, a place where everyone grew what they ate, built what they needed, and knew every face within walking distance. Now place Joseph inside this world. He is probably in his late 20s. A tecton, a word we translate as carpenter, but the Greek carries a wider meaning: builder, craftsman, a man who works with stone as much as wood, because Galilee has far more stone than timber. The archaeological record from surrounding sites, particularly Sepphoris, a major construction project just 6 kilometers north of Nazareth, shows extensive stonework during this period. Herod Antipas was rebuilding his capital. Tectons from surrounding villages were the labor force. Imagine the scene. Joseph walks 6 kilometers to Sepphoris each morning before sunrise. He hauls stone cuts, lintels, mixes plaster for buildings he will never enter. His daily wage, based on the parable in Matthew 22, which scholars believe reflects actual first-century labor rates, is 1 denarius, enough to buy food for a family for 1 day. Not a coin more.
No one will say
He walks home at sunset, eats, sleeps, returns at dawn. And in between, in the margins of this exhausting life, he is engaged to a girl named Mary. In first-century Jewish law, engagement was not what we think of today. The Mishnah, the written collection of Jewish oral law, compiled around 200 AD, but reflecting traditions that were already ancient, describes the betrothal process in forensic detail. Tractate Kiddushin, Chapter 1. Mishnah 1. A woman is acquired through money, a document, or sexual intercourse. The language is legal, not romantic. Kiddushin, the first stage of marriage, was a binding contract. Once the ketubah was signed and the bride price paid, the couple was married in the eyes of the law. The bride remained in her father's house, usually for 12 months, before the second stage nisuin, when she would move to her husband's home. But, and this is the point, breaking a betrothal required a formal divorce, a written document called a get. Witnesses, legal proceedings before the village bet in. This was not a breakup. This was a dissolution of a covenant. Joseph and Mary were in this stage, legally bound, not yet living together. And during this waiting period, Mary traveled south to visit her relative Elizabeth, a journey of roughly 150 kilometers on foot. Luke tells us she stayed about 3 months, Luke 1:56. Then she came back, 3 months pregnant, in a village where 200 people shared one spring, one synagogue, one sky, where every woman knew every other woman's body, its rhythms, its changes, its secrets, where months were counted on fingers and whispers traveled faster than water. For Joseph, this was not just personal. This was a public crisis unfolding in slow motion. And the clock was ticking. So Joseph is sitting in that room, the tools in the corner, the mat he cannot bring himself to unroll, the oil lamp burning through the last of its oil. He knows the law. He knows his rights. He knows what every man in his village would expect him to do, but what were those rights exactly? And what did each option cost? Not just Mary, but him. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 23 through 24. The law of a betrothed woman found with another man. The text is blunt. Both parties could face stoning. But the law on the page and the law on the ground were two very different things by the time Joseph was alive. And this is where most retellings of this story stop too soon. The Mishnah Tractate Sanhedrin lays out one of the most elaborate legal safeguard systems in the ancient world. To carry out a capital sentence, you needed a Sanhedrin court of at least 23 judges, a minimum of 2 eyewitnesses, not to the pregnancy, but to the act itself. Each witness interrogated separately. If their testimonies conflicted on even minor points, the time of day, the color of a garment, the case collapsed. And the Mishnah itself records a staggering line. Tractate Makot 110, a court that executed one person in 7 years was called a destructive court. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah went further once in 70 years. The entire system was architecturally designed to prevent execution, not enable it. On top of this, by Joseph's lifetime, Rome had taken the death penalty out of Jewish hands. The ius gladiator, the right of the sword, belonged to the Roman governor. John 18:31 records the Jewish leadership themselves acknowledging this. They did not have the authority to execute, so stoning was not the realistic danger. Not in any practical sense. Not in the first century. Not under Rome. The real danger was something quieter, and in some ways worse. Joseph had 2 doors. Door 1, public divorce. He could bring Mary before the local bet din, a village court of 3 elders. The case would be heard. Witnesses would confirm. Mary's pregnancy would become a public record. Her father's honor would be destroyed. She would lose every right under the ketubah, the financial protection that a divorced woman relied on to survive. In a village of 200 people, she would be permanently marked. The whisper at the well every morning. The woman no one's son would marry. A burden on her aging parents until they died, and then nothing. Door 2, quiet divorce. Jewish law permitted this. Joseph could write or get a certificate of divorce with just 2 trusted witnesses. No public court, no spectacle, no formal humiliation. Mary would still carry the stigma. A broken betrothal and a pregnancy people could count, but she would not be dragged before a court. She would not be publicly named. She would have a chance, small, fragile, but a chance to rebuild. Matthew 1:19 tells us Joseph chose the second door. And Matthew uses a specific Greek word to describe why. Dikaios, righteous. A man who followed the law, a rule keeper, the kind of man who paid his taxes, observed the Sabbath, honored his contracts. And yet this Dikaios man, this law keeper, this rule follower, chose the option that broke the rules of his own honor code, the quiet way, the way that would make the village wonder. Did he know? Was he the father? Was he too weak to act? Every neighbor would have an opinion. Every man at the construction site would have a theory. And Joseph would never correct them, because correcting them meant exposing her. He chose his own humiliation to reduce hers. And he made this choice before the dream, before the angel, before any divine confirmation. He made it with nothing but a flickering lamp and his own judgment. And then something happened. Matthew 1:20. While Joseph was still turning it over, still wrestling, still sitting in that room with the lamp burning down, he fell asleep. And in his sleep, an angel appeared to him in a dream. We read the word dream and move on. Joseph's world did not move on. The Hebrew Bible is built on dreams. Jacob fell asleep on a stone and saw a stairway to heaven. Genesis 28. Joseph the patriarch. The same name, the same tradition saved his family because he could read the dreams of kings. Daniel stood in a foreign court and spoke what no one else could see. The Talmud, compiled later, but carrying older traditions, devotes an entire section of Tractate Barakot to dreams. Chapter 55. A dream is 1/60th of prophecy. An uninterpreted dream is like a letter never opened. Joseph did not live in a world that dismissed dreams. He lived in a world that weighed them. And when he lay down on that mat exhausted, decided the get probably already drafted in his mind, he received a message that asked him to undo everything he had just decided. Keep her, take her home, name the child, stand beside a pregnant girl in a village that will never stop counting the months. Matthew 1:24 uses a single word, agertheus. He rose, not slowly, not after consideration, not after consulting his father or his friends or the village elders. He rose, the same Greek word used later for resurrection, for standing up from the dead, and he acted. He chose her. A man sits alone in a stone room. That is where we started. Now you know what was inside that room. The law, the options, the lamp, the cost. Joseph never speaks in Scripture, not a single recorded word in all four Gospels. He is the quietest major figure in the entire New Testament, and for 20 centuries artists have painted him in the background slightly out of focus, holding a lily or a lantern, while Mary holds the light. But in that room, in that village, on that night, he held the entire story in his calloused hands. If he had chosen the first door, the public one, the expected one, the one that protected his name, everything that follows in this narrative would not exist. The birth, the flight, the childhood, the ministry, the cross. All of it rested on one man's decision to